Imagine waking up in a world where the cold is not uncomfortable. It is hungry. It presses through the cracks in your shelter like a living thing. It crawls over your skin, slides beneath your furs, stiffens your fingers before you even open your eyes. Outside, the snowstorm has erased the world. The trees are gone. The hills are gone. Even the path you used yesterday to reach the frozen stream has vanished under a white, screaming curtain. And then you notice the one thing that matters more than anything else. The fire is dead. Not low, not weak. Dead. No red glow under the ash. No breathing ember. No thin ribbon of smoke rising toward the roof of your shelter. Just a circle of gray powder where, a few hours ago, there had been warmth, light, safety, and life. If you were a caveman in the middle of a snowstorm, this would not be a small problem. This could be the beginning of your death, because fire was never just fire. To us, fire is a tool, a lighter, a stove, a heater, a candle, a campfire for atmosphere. But to a prehistoric human living through an ice age winter, fire was almost like another member of the group. It guarded the entrance. It softened frozen meat. It kept predators at the edge of the darkness. It dried wet hides. It turned impossible nights into survivable ones. And now, it is gone. The first thing you would feel is not panic. It would be disbelief. Your body would freeze for a moment before your mind did. You would stare at the ashes, maybe push them aside with a stick, hoping there is still something hidden underneath. A single coal, a tiny orange eye, anything. Because if there is even one ember, everything changes. You crouch down, your breath visible in the dim shelter. The wind outside is hammering the hide walls and rattling branches overhead. Snow dust blows in through the seams. Your hands are clumsy from the cold, but you dig carefully through the ashes. Not too fast, because if a coal is alive, you could smother it. Not too slow, because every moment the cold is stealing strength from your fingers. You find nothing, just ash. At that moment, the storm outside becomes much larger in your mind. You are not simply cold, you are cut off. And this is something we often forget about prehistoric life. Survival was not just about being strong, it was about chains of tiny dependencies. One thing connected to another. Fire meant warmth. Warmth meant sleep. Sleep meant strength. Strength meant hunting, gathering, carrying, thinking, walking, protecting children. Lose fire, and the whole chain starts breaking. So what would you do? First, you would not run outside and try to make a new fire in the open snow. That would be almost useless. The wind would tear heat away faster than you could create it. Snow would soak your tinder. Your fingers would lose feeling. Your hands, which are your most important survival tools, would become slow and stupid. So before anything else, you would protect your body and protect your thinking. You pull your furs tighter. You gather the others if you have them. Maybe there are children sleeping under skins. Maybe an older woman, someone who knows every plant, every path, every old trick. Maybe a hunter with a twisted ankle who cannot move far. Nobody is separate now. In a storm like this, the group becomes one body. You move close together, not in some romantic image of cave life, but because heat is math. A lone human loses warmth from every side. A cluster of humans shares it. Bodies become walls. Breath becomes a small pocket of warmth. Children are pulled into the center. The weakest are surrounded. Even before fire returns, survival begins with closeness. Then comes the search for what can burn. And in winter, that is harder than it sounds. The world outside is full of wood, but most of it is useless right now. Snow-covered branches are wet on the outside. Dead logs may be frozen solid. Anything lying on the ground has been drinking moisture for days, maybe weeks. Fire does not begin with wood. Fire begins with something much more delicate. Tinder, dry grass, inner bark, fine wood shavings, bird down, fungus, old plant fibers, anything that can catch a spark and turn it into a breathing flame. A prehistoric human would know the difference between wood that looks dead and wood that burns. That knowledge could be worth more than muscle. The best material might not be on the ground at all. It might be hidden under bark, inside a dead branch still hanging above the snow, or tucked away in a pouch because someone in your group had the wisdom to carry dry tinder before the storm came. That one little pouch might now be more valuable than a spear. Think about that. In a world without matches, without paper, without gasoline, the difference between life and death might be a handful of dry fibers kept safe under animal hide. But even with tinder, you still need ignition. And here is where the modern image of a caveman rubbing two sticks together becomes dangerously simple. Making fire by friction is possible, but in freezing, damp, windy conditions, with numb hands and wet materials, it can be brutally difficult. It requires the right wood, the right technique, stamina, patience, and dry conditions. A bow drill or hand drill can work, but not if everything is soaked or your fingers can barely grip. Another method might involve stone. Strike flint against pyrite or another iron-rich stone, and you can create sparks. But sparks are not flames. Sparks are tiny chances. They must land on tinder that is prepared almost perfectly. Too coarse and nothing happens. Too damp, and the spark dies instantly. Too much wind, and it vanishes before it can grow. So your group begins with preparation. You do not try to light a log. You build a nest for fire. Someone scrapes inner bark into soft fibers. Someone else shaves dry wood into curls so thin they twist like feathers. Another person cracks open a branch to find the dry heartwood inside. The sound inside the shelter becomes sharp and focused. Scraping, tearing, breathing, coughing, the storm roaring outside like an animal too big to see. The cold is still coming, and cold changes the way time feels. At first, you shiver hard. That is your body fighting, burning energy to make heat. But shivering is expensive. It eats through calories you may not have. If the cold keeps winning, your movements slow. Your thoughts become soft around the edges. You stop caring as much. That is the dangerous part. Hypothermia does not always feel like terror. Sometimes it feels like sleepiness. Sometimes death approaches as comfort. That is why the group matters. Someone must stay alert. Someone must speak. Someone must keep hands moving, even when the body wants stillness. In the Ice Age, intelligence was not just inventing tools. Intelligence was refusing to let the cold make decisions for you. Now imagine you are the one trying to bring the fire back. You kneel near the dead hearth. The ashes are cold, but the place still matters. It is shielded from the wind. Stones around it remember heat better than open ground. Above you, smoke stains mark where thousands of fires may have breathed before. Maybe your people have sheltered here many times. Maybe your parents kept fire here. Maybe your grandparents did. You place the tinder bundle carefully. A few dry fibers, a pinch of powdered fungus, a curl of bark. Around it, you arrange the smallest shavings, then pencil thin twigs, then thicker sticks. Fire's not born strong. It must be fed like an infant. Too much fuel too soon and you crush it. Too little and it starves. You strike stone against stone. Once, nothing. Again. A spark jumps and dies. Again. Your hands hurt, not with sharp pain, but with that deep, cold ache that feels like your bones are tightening. Someone behind you whispers. A child starts crying, and someone covers the child's mouth gently, not out of cruelty, but because fear spreads fast in small shelters. Again, this time a spark lands. A tiny dark spot appears in the tinder. No flame, just a faint glow so small it could be imagined. You freeze. Everyone freezes. Then you breathe. Not a hard blow. That would scatter it. You breathe slowly, carefully, feeding it air the way you would feed a baby with a drop of water. The glow widens. A thread of smoke rises. The smell changes. That smell, dry fiber turning hot, might be the most beautiful smell in the world. You cup your hands around it. The ember grows brighter. The smoke thickens. And then suddenly a flame appears. Tiny, blue, orange, trembling, but alive. In that moment, the shelter changes. Not because it is warm yet. It is not. But because hope has become visible. Everyone leans toward it. The smallest sticks catch. The flame crawls from shaving to shaving. It licks upward, finds another twig, grows taller. Someone adds more fuel. Someone else blocks a gust of wind with their body. The fire crackles once. and that single sound is like a promise. But you are not safe yet. A newborn fire can still die. You must build it slowly, patiently. Dry the next pieces near the heat before adding them. Rotate damp sticks so steam hisses out before they burn. Keep the flame sheltered. Keep the smoke moving upward. Keep people close, but not so close that a careless first smothers the flames. And now another problem appears. You need more fuel. A fire in a snowstorm is not a one-time victory. It is a mouth. Once alive, it must eat constantly. The storm may last all night. It may last 2 days. The wood already inside the shelter may not be enough, so someone may have to go out. This is where survival becomes a series of terrible choices. Going outside risks frostbite, injury, getting lost, being crushed by a falling branch, or simply losing your way a few steps from shelter. Snowstorms can erase distance. The world becomes white noise. A tree that was obvious yesterday is invisible today. A person can walk in a circle and never know, but staying inside without fuel means watching the fire die again. So the group chooses the strongest, or the one who knows the area best. Maybe two go together, tied by a strip of hide, or keeping one hand on the rock wall, the trees, or a marked line. They do not wander far. They search for dead branches still caught above the snow, sheltered under overhangs, or wood stored from earlier days. The best survival is preparation that happened before the crisis. This is one of the great secrets of prehistoric life. The dramatic moment gets our attention. The storm, the dead fire, the desperate sparks. But the real survival happened earlier, in quieter choices. Carrying dry tinder, building a sheltered hearth, keeping extra fuel, knowing which trees hold dry inner wood, teaching children not just what to do, but why. Remembering where the wind hits hardest. Remembering where snow piles deepest. Remembering which cave mouth smokes badly and which one breathes. Ancient humans survived, not because they were primitive, but because they were intensely observant. Their world punished ignorance immediately. As the fire grows, the shelter begins to change again. Snow on people's furs melts into dark patches. Wet leather steams. Fingers return painfully to life. Someone warms stones near the flame, then wraps them in hide to place near sleeping bodies. Meat, stiff as wood, softens enough to chew. Ice becomes water in a container made of skin, bark, or a hollowed object placed carefully near the heat. The fire gives more than warmth. It gives the night structure. Without fire, the darkness outside presses directly against your eyes. With fire, there is a circle. Inside the circle are faces, tools, stories, breath, memory. Outside the circle are storm, predators, uncertainty, and everything humans have not yet mastered. And predators matter. A snowstorm may keep many animals hidden, but hunger can make bold creatures bolder. Wolves, cave hyenas in some places, big cats in others, scavengers drawn by smell. All of them understand weakness. Fire does not create an invisible wall, but it changes the equation. Flames move unpredictably. Smoke irritates. Light reveals eyes in the dark. A burning branch turns a fragile human arm into something frightening. Now imagine the fire had not come back. What then? The group might try to move, but moving in a snowstorm could be worse than staying. A cave, a rock shelter, even a rough hut of branches and hides may protect from wind, which is often the real killer. Without fire, they might pack themselves together under every fur they own. They might stuff dry grass between layers. They might pull snow around the outside of a shelter as insulation, because snow, strangely, can protect against colder moving air if used correctly. They might eat high-fat food if they have it, because warmth comes from burning energy inside the body too. But every option is a countdown. Wet clothing freezes, fingers lose function, children lose heat faster than adults. The old and injured begin to fade first. No one says it, but everyone knows. In the prehistoric world, death often began as a practical problem that could not be solved quickly enough. And that is why fire became more than technology. It became culture. Keeping fire alive may have shaped daily life in ways we barely think about. Someone had to tend it. Someone had to carry embers from place to place, perhaps in bark fungus, shells, or containers packed with ash. Someone had to know how to bank coals overnight, covering them just enough to preserve heat without choking them. Someone had to wake before dawn and coax yesterday's fire back to life. Fire created jobs. Jobs created responsibility. Responsibility created trust. A group that could keep fire through winter was not simply lucky, it was organized. There is something deeply human in that, because when you picture ancient people, it is easy to imagine them as rough, silent, almost animal-like figures moving through a brutal world. But a dead fire in a snowstorm reveals the opposite. It shows us how much tenderness and intelligent survival required. Someone shields the flame with their hands. Someone gives their dry fur to a child. Someone risks the storm for wood. Someone remembers an old technique learned from a grandmother. Someone tells the frightened ones with confidence they may not fully feel that the fire will return. And when it does, the group is not just warmed, it is reunited. The storm still rages outside. Snow still buries the entrance. The wind still screams across the frozen land. But inside, the flame grows steady. Shadows move across the stone walls. Faces glow orange. The youngest child stops crying. The older people close their eyes, listening to the crackle. The hunters inspect spear points by firelight. Someone laughs quietly, maybe from relief more than humor. For a moment, the entire universe is reduced to a circle of heat, and you understand something your modern life has almost hidden from you. Survival is not guaranteed by intelligence alone. It depends on attention, memory, cooperation, and respect for small things. A coal, a twig, a dry fiber, a shared breath, a hand that knows when to strike, when to wait, and when to protect the tiniest flame from the wind. If you were a caveman and your fire died during a snowstorm, you would be standing at the edge of everything humans feared: cold, darkness, hunger, predators, helplessness. But you would also be standing at the center of what made humans extraordinary, because long before cities, writing, farming, metal, or wheels, there was this: a small group in the dark, refusing to let the fire die. And maybe that is one reason fire still holds us. Why even now, after all our machines and electric lights, we stare into flames as if they remember us. As if some ancient part of the mind still knows what that glow means. Not comfort, not decoration, survival, a tiny sun made by human hands burning against the storm.